welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by my best friend and the perfect toy. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
It's
I don't know how to make that work with your name.
It's going very well, Scott. Oh, don't forget to use your coaster.
My nest. This week on the show, we're taking a look at the Blumhouse studio or production studio, their latest smash horror film, 2023's M3GAN. Matt saw this movie a few times and really wanted to talk about it. So here we are, Matt. We're talking about M3GAN.
Yeah, I mean, can I provide a little backstory there? The funny.
You can, but let's get through the intro first.
Okay, all right, Scott. Fine, have it your way.
Get it, Matt. The structure of the show is extremely important to the show. We can't break structure.
All right, well, everybody just wait for. Yep.
Just hold your breath. Yep. And then after we finish talking about M3GAN, the Oscars were last weekend, Matt, and I wanted to talk to you about those briefly at the end of our show.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Matt. Now you can tell me your story all about Blumhouse's M3GAN.
Katie, you lost your parents.
Welcome home.
You're my niece. I'm gonna do everything I can to make this place feel like home.
I just wish I could see them again.
I'm not equipped to handle this. I don't even take care of my own plants. I have this project at work. Do you want to see?
Yes.
Ever since I was little, I dreamed of this perfect toy that would protect a kid from ever feeling lonely or sad. This is M3GAN.
Hi, M3GAN. I'm Katie. It's nice to meet you, Katie. Do you want to hang out? Okay.
M3GAN.
But before you do that, Matt, what is M3GAN all about?
M3GAN is about a robotics engineer at a toy company who builds a lifelike doll that begins to take on a life of her own.
It's a mouthful. It was written by Akilah Cooper and James Wan, directed by Gerard Johnstone, and stars Allison Williams and Violet McGraw, as well as a presumably a girl who played M3GAN.
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, I don't think they got a real robot for that.
I think because we actually watched some behind the scenes stuff, which is a wonderful segue.
Matt, yeah, go ahead. I give you permission now to tell your story.
Yeah, so I mean, it was funny because I mean, I was mildly curious about the movie, but I probably wouldn't have watched it on my own. But my 10-year-old just really wanted to see it, and like it was something that her and her friends were talking about. So somehow, like the marketing vector really hit like the younger generation, and they're not even they're like on the leading edge of preteen. They're not even preteens really. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really interesting. And then we watched it because I saw, it was rated PG-13, and I was like, okay, they can handle that. And actually, I think I might have. We watched it together, and I was just like, yeah, we'll cover our eyes if it's too bad, but I knew it wouldn't be because it's PG-13, and it was fine. They enjoyed it. They liked it a lot. Like they wanted to rewatch it, which is always a good sign with them because it's pretty hell yeah or no when it comes to kids, and the fact they wanted to rewatch it counts for a lot. I enjoyed it. Obviously, I thought it was fun. I thought it was well made. It was like surprisingly well thought out, actually, as far as like an AI going haywire movie. Nothing. Not that you need to hold all movies to the standard of like realism when they're just trying to be kind of a silly, borderline comic horror movie. But I thought it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, and also there's a lot of elements of satire to it that works really well. Yeah. So overall liked it, and the funny part to me was that it was actually my kids that motivated me to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last time you and I talked about this movie was before both of us had seen it, and we were talking about the incredibly successful marketing campaign that this movie had, which obviously worked like gangbusters on your daughter. Yeah. That this movie made a whole heap load of money. It cost like $12 million to make and brought in $172.5 million worldwide, which is a huge profit. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And it is mostly because of this incredible marketing campaign that they ran for it. But I think it's more than the marketing campaign. I actually think this is a very smartly engineered movie to be very successful at everything, at hitting the exact target audiences that it wants to do. And I don't say that to take anything away from it, because I agree with you. I liked this movie a lot. I think this movie is doing a lot of things, but you kind of watch how it taps into all these things that people are thinking about, while also being like meme heavy, while also being like having almost designed virality into it. And it's just like you just sit back and on this, because I watched it again for this podcast, and you're just like looking at like, oh my god, that's brilliant how they did that actually. And it's just like very good storytelling overall, well made movie, but also just brilliantly engineered to be as successful as possible.
Yeah, I mean, right. That's a really interesting way of framing it, because there's a lot of directions we can jump off from there. Because we can talk about the idea that narratively it's well constructed, as like as a horror movie, it's well constructed because it slowly builds up toward these graphic, violent moments that kind of feel really earned. So you're actually kind of it's one of those movies where you're actually happy about the horrible violence that's being done, because it's sort of righteous to a greater or lesser degree.
I don't know. When the child gets run over by a
Yeah,
car, man.
that was awesome.
I mean, he was an asshole, but I don't want to see a child murdered. I'm starting to worry
I
about
said
you,
what
buddy.
I said. No, I mean, what it really is like, there's kind of two kinds of horror movies. There's the kind where you really don't want your characters to get killed, but they're getting killed anyway. And then there's the kinds where you kind of hate your characters and you are kind of enjoying watching them getting killed. And that's what this
Yeah.
one was. And until the end, when M3GAN, spoilers, I guess, comes after our.
Yeah, we should say full spoilers, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we always do. I
Yeah.
know it's a new-ish movie, but it's full spoilers.
So just structurally, it's that kind of like satisfying, well-paced, well-structured horror movie. But then threaded throughout that is actually a nice satire on all kinds of things. Very timely. Like that's what impressed me about it is like, I'm going to refer to this movie in a way that I might not refer to other movies, because it's like it really nails a lot of our current feelings around social media addiction to devices, using devices to parent your children for you, screen time.
Yep.
The very timely worries about AI, which are currently mild at this exact moment of time, but becoming increasingly more serious. We're sort of in a world where people are first beginning to talk about like actually selling commercial robotics, to households. So a lot of very timely satire, and then just like a good core of character. Like everything just kind of works, right? It's not like my favorite movie. It's not a great film. It's just like, wow, this is it's like you're walking around a house and thinking like, this is like a really well designed house. It's not ostentatious. It's not particularly well furnished. Maybe it's not a mansion. It's not huge. It's just well designed. Everything is well thought out. It's tasteful.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I mean, I think I think that this is part of what I mean by the engineering of it, in that like the timeliness of it is that it just feels like perfectly engineered to land right at this moment. Because I mean, like any parent right now is having conversations with their spouse or partner about screen time, right? Every single parent is having that conversation, because that's just one of the most prevalent thing parents are thinking about right now is does my kid have too much screen time? Should I feel bad about this? Because we're all addicted to our devices anyway, and we have children we're trying not to get addicted to their devices, but yet they do it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so, like my son was home with me on Monday because his daycare was like closed for like a teacher in service day. I don't know what it was, but he was home with me all day Monday, and my wife was at work. It was just me and him, and I also had work to do as well. And so, not gonna lie, he watched a little more YouTube on Monday than I probably would have liked him to. Thanks, Miss Rachel, for really stepping in there for me. Really appreciate that. But I mean, this things everyone's thinking about, and that's kind of the opening of the movie, right? Is first we have the pet toy commercial which is like a really great like statement of satire that this is going to be a satirical
Yeah,
movie,
yeah.
right? Because you think about what the mood of the film would be if you just open with the parents dying in the car crash scene, and like how different the mood of the film would feel going from that moment if it was just that. But first we open with this faux commercial about these frankly terrible
Yeah.
toys
They
that are the I forget what are they called again? I just blanking on their name.
I forgot to, but the thing for me is that they kind of look like the original film Sonic, where like their teeth are really prominent. They look kind of like
Yeah.
critters, you know. They're like they're scary and weird and upsetting looking.
It's like it's like if you took the Furby
Yeah,
and then made it
yeah,
terrifying.
yeah,
I looked it up. They're called the Perpetual Pet,
yeah,
which is great.
yeah,
And they like poop out little nuggets. Like what are those?
yeah.
It's just an awful, awful looking toy. But so we open on that commercial, and you're automatically like, this is terrible. And then we move into the car and do everything in the car. Where once again, this is a very economical movie that every scene is doing something, and that scene is not just about watching her lose her parents, which become like the driving force of the plot of the film, but also what are they having an argument about in the car? They're arguing about how much she's on her
Yeah.
iPad, what her screen
Yeah.
time
Well,
is, and having disagreements on how much is too much, et cetera, et cetera, et
so
cetera.
my favorite thing about that argument, and I'm pretty sure that I'm right about this because I've watched the movie a few times, is the mom is the one who's kind of on this rant where she's like, she's just spending too much time on it. I don't know, she just needs to. We really need to set some boundaries, and
Mhm.
and the dad is like, I know, I agree. You're the one who gave it to her, and and this is a dynamic that I have seen play out firsthand, that I've seen play out with other people, where it's like it's like a utterly two-faced behavior that we all do, and I'm including myself,
Mhm.
where like out of one side of our mouth we'll say, all right, we need to crack down on this screen time, we need to set firm rules, we need to have 30 minutes a day by the clock. My god, that
Yeah.
didn't last long. And then on the other side of your mouth you're like, okay, fine, yeah, you can, whatever, I don't see the harm of it in this exact moment
Yeah.
where I need you to be doing something other than bothering me while I'm trying to work. I mean,
Yeah, I've got to work. I've got to fold the laundry. I've got to make dinner, and this will keep you occupied
Yeah.
for that
Right.
perfect amount of
I mean,
time. So just go.
just kind of autobiographically, like I at least tried to hold the line prior to COVID, but with COVID, where they were just at home, all day, and I was having to work all day, it's like, what else are you going to do, other than just
Yeah.
plop them somewhere? And I did try to set restrictions, and I sort of succeeded, but just like it was a war of attrition, basically.
Yeah.
And I think everybody experienced that. So that's one of the ways in which it's timely, is we're all living in this world where I think every parent out there feels like they just lost a war. And then here comes M3GAN. Like,
Yeah.
this problem isn't getting better, right? It's
Yeah. Well, again, and the movie's so wonderfully written to where, like, we're doing the commercial for M3GAN, like that one sequence where it's just Allison Williams doing the voiceover for the presentation around M3GAN, and like she's saying all these things, and as a person, you're like, this isn't good. And like the thing I love about it is it's interjecting her voiceover with scenes going on. So like my favorite moment of this whole thing is when it says like M3GAN can take care of the mundane tasks, so you're free to do the things you want. And it's her like sitting on the couch watching TV. It's just, you go like, oh, you suck. And that's one of the things I love most about this movie, actually, is Allison Williams' character in this movie, Gemma, is a kind of an asshole, actually. Like, she's not like a great person, and she's trying, right? She is trying. She's saddled with a child suddenly, doesn't she obviously is a person that's kind of married to her career, doesn't really have any friends outside of the people she works with, doesn't seem to be in any kind of romantic relationship at all, doesn't seem interested in children at all, which is ironic considering she makes toys for a living. And she's saddled with this burden while also grieving for her dead sibling. But she sucks, man. Like the one sequence where the child has been bit by a dog, and she's like, oh, M3GAN's right, you really should sleep and get your rest. But we do have that presentation today. But I mean, you can totally
Yeah,
skip it. You need your
it'll just
rest.
be my job
I
if
mean,
you.
people did fly
Yeah,
all the way across the country, and it's just like, you are
yeah,
awful. You're awful. And I love that the movie's not afraid to show her as awful, because like the I know I'm talking about a lot of things here, but the relationship between the two neighbors is another really interesting thing that this movie's doing, because yeah, her neighbor kind of sucks, but she kind of sucks to her neighbor
yeah.
too. She's like really mean to her.
Yeah, right. I mean, obviously, once the dog bites the child, you kind of have cause, right? But prior to that, it's like,
Oh yeah.
really, who cares if the dog like crosses the fence every once in a while? I mean, I get that people can get really worked up about these things, and I kind of do understand, but like, it's not to me, it's not worth it to have that level of conflict with the person who literally lives next door. Like, you're like that's just a huge pain in
Yeah.
your ass. So yeah, I mean, I
Well,
agree. She's a good character, actually, because she's
mhm.
complex in that way where she's flawed. She's this selfish, careerist person who doesn't really care about anyone, and yet, like you said, paradoxically, is working really hard to build this AI. Um, that's got to be some kind of commentary on, like, wanting to build someone that you can have a relationship with, but you can control completely,
Yeah. Yeah.
because she can't control anyone else, obviously. Like, that's,
Well, just the idea that she didn't want to be a parent, she's building something that can take that burden off her shoulders.
yeah, yeah. And she has
You
she
know,
has the toys, right? She has all the toys that like, she collects toys, but she keeps,
yeah.
she keeps them wrapped in their original wrapping, because it's not about playing, it's about, keeping everything contained and pristine. um
Yep. Yep. Yeah, she's a great character, and Allison Williams has this really fascinating career, Matt, because she's Brian Williams' daughter. I don't know if you know that, the news anchor Brian Williams.
no.
Brian Williams' daughter. She really, I think her first big role was on the HBO show Girls, where she played one of the main characters, Marnie, and she's kind of a piece of shit in that show too. Like, all the girls in that show are like varying levels of great and wonderful and pieces of shit. That's just part of what the show is. But she plays this really like selfish, self-absorbed kind of asshole character really well, and then she gets cast in Jordan Peele's Get Out, where she gets to do that as well, where she has that wonderful, wonderful heel turn in that movie, where you think she doesn't know any of this is going on, and then actually she 100% did, and is the bait that's bringing these black men back. That's a great role for her. She was in another film called The Perfection, where she does a similar thing there, and then she's here in this role, where again she's, a relatable character, I think, but also kind of, you're just like, you just kind of suck. She's just kind of mastered that, like, yeah, you just kind of suck a little bit
Uh-huh.
here.
Yeah, just kind of that bitter twist of expression. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
great. No, I mean, I think she does. She hits exactly the right note throughout the movie, as kind of the situation morphs. That's one of my chronic complaints about horror movies, is like, the performances often don't like match the tenor of like what's going on. That there can be a kind
Mm.
of flatness from moment to moment, where I don't really know what to blame this on, or if this is just like a convention of horror movies and I just need to go with the program. But anyway, this is not a problem I had with this movie, where like, as things escalate, she actually seems to become appropriately concerned with the situation. Um, so
Yeah, I agree. I think I have a few complaints about this movie,
sure.
and my one complaint around the Gemma character is that I do think this is a movie that is, posing these interesting questions, like, how much, in a world where AI and screens and robotics and all these things are going to becoming increasingly prevalent in our everyday lives, what is the appropriate amount of, direct human to human interaction, and what is the appropriate amount of, using this technology to help us through all this stuff. And I think that's a really interesting question that the movie poses. And I think the disappointing thing about the film to me is that I feel like in the third act we kind of just toss all that aside very, very quickly. Like, I think Gemma's kind of moment of realization and then, speech to Katie in the beginning of the third act feels just like too neatly tied up in a bow, to where it's just like, oh, she just was watching Katie being interviewed and had this sudden realization, and then goes and talks to Katie for the first time about grief and loss, and then suddenly Katie's just like totally fine with everything, and we're all good now. We don't really like M3GAN anymore, and we're just gonna go home and everything's good. It just felt too wrapped up
Yeah.
to me, especially because it felt like the movie was going to do a really interesting thing where M3GAN at the end like goes to Katie and is like, you heard what we were talking about. I'm right. I'm a better family member and parent than she'll ever be. And you feel like Katie's going to go with her. And there was a real moment there where I was like, oh, I see what we've been leading up to here. Actually, I believe in this moment that Katie will choose M3GAN. I do. And then she just doesn't. And it's, I guess, just because of that one speech Gemma made to her.
Yeah.
And that, like, it just feels too neat a little bit, and it just disappointed me.
I did feel vaguely disappointed that we didn't actually see like the dark ending, right? Where she actually sides with the robot, and
I don't even need it to like end that
Yeah.
way. I just like I think that they should have played the temptation of it out a little further than they did.
Well, partly I think maybe at like a more a higher level of storytelling, it's sort of a shame that it had to be a horror movie, because the idea being explored is explored very cleverly. It's not just like the kids are spending too much time with their devices. It's like the kids are forming relationships with technology that they should properly be forming with other human beings, like be it parasocial relationships with streamers, be it surrogate relationships with video game characters who aren't real, via obsession with fiction, which is a thing that I think even our generation, I think our parents worried about that specific thing for us. But just like
Sure.
obsession with fictional relationships in stuff we were watching. All of these things are manifested in the idea of, oh, very dramatic idea. The girl loses her parents, and then she is provided with a sort of perfect, friend / parent figure that is artificial and perfect and flawless to fill in this role, that will always prioritize her and never snap at her, and so on. And that's like a great sci-fi concept. Like you can imagine a sci-fi like short story version of this that isn't a horror story, that's actually just a very emotional, difficult story where it's like we have to take M3GAN away. The girl is becoming too addicted and too dependent on M3GAN, and then it's like, well, do we? Like, is that the right thing to do? And I mean, or you can imagine like a TNG episode about this, actually.
Sure, yeah.
But it has to be a horror movie, and I'm not saying like, oh, this should have been a very boring science fiction film. Like, no, I think it's a good horror movie. I'm just saying, like, there's always that tension. I think I actually feel this often with horror movies, where I feel like the final act of a horror movie is this disjoint break from like whatever thing we were doing before, because it's like, and then it tries to kill them. Whatever the thing is, it tries to kill them.
Yeah, because that was my other big complaint with this film, is that M3GAN's kind of decision that she's just going to kill Katie now, I felt really disappointed by as well.
Yeah.
Because I think the line specifically is, I have a new primary user now, me, or something. And it's like, no, like it would actually be so much more interesting if it's just her ongoing, like, genuine, I'll put it in quotes, love, and desire to protect and comfort and prevent Katie from going through pain, that leads her to kind of lose it and go crazy, and inadvertently hurt Katie. I think that is so much more interesting than just, oh, you attacked me with your other robot, well, I'm gonna fuck you up now type of horror ending. I thought that was really, really disappointing, actually.
Yeah, I agree. No caveats. The idea, like everything about the way the M3GAN AI was portrayed was a very consistent character, and consistent with like, yeah, that could go that way. Like this is being played relatively straight until that moment, and then you're just like, oh, okay, she's evil now. That's boring.
Yeah. because the film like beautifully like brings Megan these moments of change, you know, where she starts off as like just following her programming and being the parent character, where you see her kind of transition away from that. I think the way some of the most clever bits of the movie is where they do that, you know, subtly. Like I love the bit where we establish the constant reminder to put your glass on a coaster bit, and then about halfway through the movie, Katie puts down her glass, doesn't put it on a coaster. Gemma looks at Megan, waiting for Megan to say something about it, and Megan chooses not to say anything about it, which symbolizes a shift in her what she feels is her responsibility as caretaker of this kid. And that's a great little moment there that really establishes how all this works, and you can see the robot changing and learning, and it does, it just kind of gets tossed out at the end.
Yeah.
For the sake of that climactic, you know, moment in a horror film.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think what sort of ameliorates the complaint for me is just like I have virtually the same complaint about like 75% of horror movies. So
That's fair. That's fair.
But
Yeah, it is often the most disappointing part of the film for me in horror. Like everything in horror, the setup, the beginning and the middle parts are always the scariest, the most exciting, the most interesting, and then it. I mean, this does have Megan like dancing down a hallway and then yanking a paper cutter off its thing to go kill someone. So I mean, that part of the climax works pretty well, but
sure.
the ending itself was a little disappointing.
No, I agree. I mean, there's I think I totally agree that like the fun part of the ending is when she's fucking up everybody at the office, and that's kind of like a fun, well-deserved revenge type situation. But like the way things play out once they get home. I mean, I actually did love the idea of like, you know, don't worry, I'm just going to stab you in the brain with this, and you'll be in a vegetative state, and then like it was like that was such a fun idea that I was like, oh, that's like that's like a really fun, creative, evil, but like pragmatic thing to do.
You're right, because this isn't to say there was nothing about the ending that I didn't like, because I loved the conversation between the two of them where Megan's talking about, you know, when she originally programmed this AI and the bond Megan thought they had, and then the whole thing where Katie is standing, you know, at the doorway and they're fighting and trying to hide it. Like, that's all great shit. I loved that shit so much. But it's just the very, very, very end is what really bummed me out, because everything else is just, I don't know, it's just very, very fun. This is a very funny movie. You're absolutely right. It's satire. It knows it's satire. The movie is constantly dressing Megan like it just dresses her in the most absurd looking clothing that just really accentuates her creepiness constantly. Like the very nice, prim and proper clothing, the jackets, like the one scene where she's put on the toy table and is just sitting there looking pissed off on the toy table. It's just like it knows exactly what it's doing, and it executes on that idea so well constantly.
I would say this is one of those movies that really relishes in the fun and games section, where it's like, okay, like what is the concept here? Okay, we've got a you know, AI toy doll. Okay, well, let's do everything we can do with that idea. Let's have some sequences that are basically, I mean, like the one you pointed out a minute ago, where it's like the voiceover, so it's almost like an ad, but then you're seeing this all play out, and it's like, and then you're like nodding along. You're like, yeah, that is how that would go, and it's tempting. Like, that's what's fun about it as a concept, is you're not able to fully be like, oh, what a terrible idea this would be. It's like, oh yeah, it's going to be cool when we have household robots. Set aside for a minute that I know this is a horror movie and this one's going to go crazy. like it's a cool idea. It's just objectively a cool idea, and it's cool to see it on the screen. You know, in terms of like VFX, the movie doesn't really demand much, because it's basically an actress in a suit with like a mask, and I guess they do some additional CGI on the mask. But it works really. It's like exactly what it needs to be, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, it is like I said, this movie, $12 million. It didn't cost very
yeah,
much, and that's kind of what like the Blumhouse model actually is. They're going to make movies for cheap, and then so even if they don't blow up, they usually make their money back on them. And occasionally you get ones like this, which they knew what they had. I mean, that's one interesting thing about this movie is when they were filming it, it was a rated R film, and at some point in the production, they were like, oh. I think we know what we have here, and it would actually be relatively simple for us to tone it down and make it PG-13, and then suddenly we could have a huge hit because suddenly we can get the teen market in on it as well. And that's what they did, and it worked. And actually, the version of the film that I watched the second time was the unrated quote unquote version, and it's just a little bit more blood. It's completely superfluous. It wasn't necessary. It would not have made the movie better. They made 100% the right decision there, and it's one of the reasons the movie was so successful, because you could get teenagers in to come go see this movie, and it's part of the reason it was a hit.
that's great. I mean, that makes me happy. Honestly, it's you take out probably like 5 seconds of gore, and you make $90 million, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
I have no real problem with this, but I mean, I think I have
It's
specific attitude about like I there's a difference between violence and gore, I
yeah,
like yeah.
yeah. And, the horror community is really interesting too. And I know you're not very plugged into this fan group because you're just not a big horror movie
Yeah.
fan, but they don't like PG-13 horror films. There's a real stigma against them, and it's really interesting to me that this film didn't get the kind of blowback that those kind of decisions usually make, because they feel like they're neutering the horror a little bit to make it PG-13. And I don't think this movie received that kind of blowback, and I think it's because it does what it does so well, and it's because it's a satire, and it's because when Megan runs after a person, she runs on all fours because it looks fucking
Yeah.
terrifying and also hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
And it just, again, the movie is just executing very, very well at the things it's doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's because there's a whole movie here that happens to be a horror movie.
Mhm.
It's not one
Yeah.
of these things where it's all just like about the gore and the shock and the
Mhm.
grotesqueness of it. Like, yeah, I mean, you could have just seen Megan like go with the boy into the woods and then just like cut away, and then later the boy is found dead, and that would have been somewhat less satisfying, but it would have still been really creepy. And I like, the point is the storytelling of it is what's scary, not the like moment to moment blow by blow of it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, good.
I have a question though.
Uh-huh.
$10,000.
Uh-huh.
Do you really think that's the price tag they set on Megan in the world of the movie? Do you really think that this thing would cost 10 grand? I'm guessing considerably more than that.
I mean, I would guess at least 20, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think we'll just wave our hands and say this is into the future. Maybe it's cheaper to build stuff now. Like maybe it's cheaper to buy the chips to, or maybe they're better at manufacturing. Look, I'm already taking it more seriously than it needs to be. It's funny because whether it's $10,000 or $20,000, it's still well outside of the price range of the vast majority of people. But I think this is one of the things that the movie kind of took seriously that I kind of liked, actually, was the idea that this isn't for everyone. Like we're going to sell a bunch of these $20,000 Megans. They're going to be a luxury item, and then maybe we'll use that money to develop cheaper versions of Megans, more downscale Megans, which I don't remember how much. There's maybe like one or two lines of dialogue along these lines, but it was enough. It was enough dialogue to show you that they had thought about this and to get you kind of thinking like, oh yeah, there is going to be like a class system of who has the best robots. That's a fun idea.
Yeah, and I do think eventually we are going to have personal home robots. That's going to be a thing that happens probably within our lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know, like the idea of marketing them as kind of a toy that is that cost prohibitive. I don't know if it'll actually go that way. I think it'll be much more like a home helper that can also help with parenting, because that's part of home helping.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I don't know.
I think it'll be a sort of like all around, cleaning,
yeah,
etc.
I'm just thinking about how sticky my child's hands are, and my child putting his sticky hands all over this $20,000 machine that I have walking around in my house.
I'm imagining the robot spending half of its day cleaning itself like a cat. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, well,
but no, I mean, overall fun movie. It's getting a sequel, by the way, of course, because it was successful, so it has to get a sequel. I thought it'd be really cool if they called it M3GAN, but apparently it's M3GAN 2.0. So
yeah, I can't blame him too hard for that one, but
sure. I like. I don't know. How do you feel about the idea of this getting a sequel? Like, this is one of those things that, like, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I don't know if this needs to be a franchise. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe if they have an interesting idea and something additional to explore with both these characters and this product, because in the sequel, both Allison Williams and Violet McGraw, who plays Katie, are coming back for the sequel. So it's going to be about the same characters. And obviously, you know, we saw at the end, M3GAN is not dead, Matt. She just transferred herself to the home assistant robot thing. So I don't know. I am not like jazzed about more of this universe, but I don't know. Maybe they can do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm in the same position as you, where it's like, you know, every once in a while there's a sequel that kind of is something special, but I never assume that it will be, because, you know, this was one movie. If this becomes the M3GAN franchise in 10 years from now, we're on M3GAN 6, and like I mean, it's funny to me, because we could look back and we could say, like, you know, M3GAN 4 was just great. All the other ones were mediocre, you know. Or we could just, or it could just be like, yeah, they made more M3GAN movies. I didn't know that, right? Like, there's literally no way to predict. It could be,
yeah, that's true.
It could be M3GAN 7 could be the one where it's like, it's like, yeah, that was the one where they got Jim Jarmusch.
What?
And
I know you've got him on the brain because we were talking about Jim Jarmusch yesterday, but just no, that's the most absurd name you could put.
It is, yeah. I was trying to find an absurd one, and it was like, well, there's Jim Jarmusch right there, so we'll just go with that. But yeah, because that's the funny thing about long running franchises is you never quite know what you're going to get. And I think there's often a license to be kind of ridiculous and experimental with these long running franchises, where, you know, late down into the entries, it's like, this is going to make a little bit of money because it's part of the franchise and people are dumb. So let's just have fun with it, and then you can get something really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly did that with the Child's Play, the Chucky movies. I don't exactly know how many of those there were, but it was quite a few. And so that's kind of the forebear to this idea of the killer toy. In that movie, it was a serial killer that accidentally like transferred his soul into the body of a toy, not an AI. But it's the same basic idea, and they made a franchise out of that, and a lot of those sequels are fun. So yeah, I mean, they could do something really fun with this, certainly.
And the answer to your question is 8.
8.
Yeah,
Chucky films.
8. Well, there's
Jesus.
There's apparently 7, and then there's a reboot. I don't know.
Yeah, they just did a reboot, and the reboot is basically this movie, because instead of making Chucky a serial killer inside the body of a doll, they just made him a rogue AI.
Okay.
Which I watched that movie and it was okay. I think that, I don't know, there's something really cool about the Chucky series, which is that like he transfers his soul into this doll, and the longer he's in the doll, like the doll becomes more human and he becomes more trapped in it. And so like when they're beating up the doll and ripping the doll apart at the end of the movies, it's always like human skin and like viscera in there, which is just a really fun, gross idea. And that just doing the AI thing in that series, I think, takes a little away from it. But especially now when you have M3GAN, you can just do that in this series.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we'll see what they do with this new concept it does seem to be very
We
much of the
will
moment.
see. It does. It does. I mean, it's really cool, and it didn't bother me like some of the other horror films did. I think I've talked to you about that movie Smile that also came out last year. Another horror movie that had a really good viral marketing campaign and therefore did really well because of it. I liked this movie. I didn't like that Smile movie. That really annoyed me. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's also Blumhouse. Actually, is it?
I
Maybe
don't know.
not. Um,
Yeah, I definitely heard mixed
but
things about it where, I mean, I think even you kind of said mixed things about it where it's like it had some stuff that was solid and that just made it all the more disappointing in the end.
Yeah, well, like there's this thing that we're doing now, especially in horror, where like everything is related to trauma.
Mhm.
Like everything, like even Megan a little bit is about trauma in some ways, but Smile is like specifically about trauma and the way trauma haunts you and manifests in you and can eventually destroy you, which is a fun idea. The problem is, and I don't want to spoil the ending of the movie, but the problem is when you make a movie about trauma and then you end it in certain ways, it can cloud the messages that you're trying to get across about what trauma can do to people. It's hard to really explain this without getting into
Yeah.
all that, but
Well,
it's just it was pretty
I
disappointing.
mean, it's funny. I don't want to, put words in your mouth, and I haven't seen it, but it's funny how it's like once again, it seems that the problem is like a storyteller has some thoughtful and nuanced thing that they want to say, and then they're kind of handcuffed by the idea of like, and then it has to end with everybody dying, and the monster goes crazy and kills people, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess we have to do that to like
Yeah.
make money, but I wish that we didn't have to do that because doesn't really go with the story I wanted to tell here.
Well, let me without spoiling Smile, make a comparison to the movie Ring, which in a lot of ways is similar to that movie. And the way the cool thing about the Ring is the way it ends is like a fun horror movie twist,
Uh-huh.
right? Like you think she's gonna help the little girl and everything's gonna be okay again because she helped the ghost, she gave the ghost rest, and then the wonderful twist is you weren't supposed to help her, and it's this really shocking thing that succeeds in shocking you, the viewer, but I think does not damage or upend the central metaphor of what the Ring was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the Ring is doing a lot of things, but it's talking about the way in which we specifically kind of pass on terrible things that happen to us
Mm-hmm.
via like watching media
Uh-huh.
and stuff like
Sure.
that. And so like the idea at the end that no, you don't actually help her, all you can do to stop it is to just make someone else watch the tape and make a copy of it, is like fits within that central thing, and I don't think upends the metaphor that they were going for in the Ring.
But
Not
yeah.
so in this other
Okay.
movie.
Yeah, I will. I'm probably not going to watch it anyway because I'm not a big horror guy.
Don't watch it. It's also one of those like it's a jump scare horror film,
Mm-hmm.
in like it's just all about building tension, building tension, building tension. Boom! Someone's head comes out of the frame. You didn't see it.
Yeah,
It's
musical sting
So.
of violins, I assume.
Yes. The one thing I think the movie does really, really, really well is I don't know how they've gotten people's smiles to look this freaking creepy, but it does a really good job at just having people like stare at you and smile and making it super fucking creepy. It's really good.
There's been some fun auditions where they were like, show up if you have just the creepiest smile, and if people always tell you have a creepy smile.
Yeah, because part of me thought that maybe they like digitally enhance that stuff to make it creepier, but apparently no, they just told people to do your creepiest smile.
That's fun. Makes me want to go see how creepy of a smile I can make in the mirror.
Do that, man. Go
I'll
for
do it. I will.
All right. I think we're done talking about M3GAN now.
Okay.
That was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Doof.
All right, Matt. The 95th Annual Academy Awards happened this past Sunday, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about it. I'll say this at the front, Matt. Nobody assaulted anyone on stage this year, so that's different.
Yeah. That's a refreshing change of pace.
They did reference that event so many times throughout the course of the evening. The thing that I think was clever actually is they never actually said Will Smith's name. They just referenced that incident, and they also made it very clear that they have a crisis management team on on standby, and that they now have protocols in place where if anyone in the building assaults someone else in the building, they will not allow them to stay there and
Yeah.
then go up on stage and accept an award.
Right.
They will escort them off the premises. So there was lessons learned there. I think the most interesting thing about this Oscars actually is that it wasn't very interesting. It seemed to be a show that was almost by design uneventful. Like they didn't want anything to happen, kind of, which is really interesting to call an event uneventful. And it's not like things didn't happen. Like we'll talk about some of the wins here in a sec, but as a just a show, just a performance, just a thing we watched, it was just kind of it was just the Oscars. Nothing really happened. No surprises, no mistakes. It was just they just wanted a solid show. They had Jimmy Kimmel come on and host again. He's hosted a bunch of times, and he's just like a solid, gonna be entertaining but not gonna do anything crazy type of host. It was just an award show, and that's
Yeah.
all they wanted it to be.
I mean, if I'm on their, planning and management team, I'm saying we want to distance ourselves from the tabloid spectacle. We
Mhm.
want to be serious, elevated, glamorous, um, uh, uh, above it all, above all that kind of stuff. We're not,
Mhm.
we and sounds like that's what they went for. Maybe even at
Yeah.
the expense of being like viral and entertaining and everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of see it as, because it's like the alternative is you just kind of turn it into that skit and you just say like, okay, fine. If people pay more attention to us when ridiculous, embarrassing things happen, then let's see if we can drum some of that up. And I admit I'm glad they're not going that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's working. I guess the viewership for this uh, award ceremony was at 17.5 million, which is up from last year's 16 million, which is up from the previous year's 10 million. So they are trending in the right direction. I don't know. I think they got a bump from the slap. If I'm being honest with you, I think people maybe tuned into the Oscars this year that normally wouldn't, to see if anything was going to happen or to see what people would say about it. I think they probably got a bump from that, but so I don't know if next year we're going to see similar numbers to this year, or if they're going to go down again. I suspect numbers will go down again. But I mean, the other thing, Matt, was that there was a lot of big popular films nominated this year. Top Gun Maverick and Avatar 2 were both nominated for Best Picture. People saw and loved those movies. And of course, the big winner of the night was Everything Everywhere All at Once, which basically won everything. It won 7 of its 9 awards, and the 7 it won were all big ones. It won for screenplay, director, actor, supporting actress, supporting actor, and of course Best Picture, which is
Yeah.
It makes me happy because I can't remember the last time my favorite movie of the year won the Best Picture award at the Oscars. I think that almost never happens. But it also is kind of crazy to me that this is the movie that like caught wind with the Academy. Like it's just not that type of movie. It's just not. And it's kind of wild to me.
Yeah. I agree. It's surprising.
Mhm.
It's not my sense of what I would expect to win the award. It's so far from the notion of the Oscar bait film, right? Like
Mhm.
yeah, it has this dramatic core to it. It's a very emotional film. It does have that, right? It has these spectacular performances.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like it's a weird, silly movie. It has these extremely sort of like profane moments. But just overall, I think it's just undeniably like firing on every possible cylinder there is to fire on for a film, and so
Yeah.
it's almost undeniable. But
I agree. It's
that's
just like I think it really does demonstrate that the makeup of the Academy has changed over the last
mhm.
few years. It's just
Yeah,
not the same group of people that it used to be, and that's exciting. It really is.
yeah. I mean, I think that seems to be the case. Like we complained in different words at different times, but we've complained over the last handful of years, like, why aren't they making movies that people like anymore, basically? And with Avatar 2 and Top Gun Maverick and Everything Everywhere All at Once, like, these are three movies where it's like these are really fun movies people liked, and people
Yeah.
talked about how great they were and how fun they were, and maybe went to see in the theater multiple times.
Yeah.
And like seeing that, like, okay, great, we finally have these movies, and not only that, but they're being recognized in the awards show. Like, that makes us actually excited to watch it, right? And like
Mhm.
that's what I feel has been missing. That's been kind of the disconnect. I know I'm not an expert. I don't actually have my I'm not elbows deep into the numbers, but I just vibes wise, I feel like the reason why the Academy Awards have been trending down has been because the appeal of films has been trending down.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
there's nothing they could have done differently as an organization, because for whatever reason, like, there's been this weird equilibrium surrounding the kinds of movies that are getting made, and this last year was kind of a reversal of that trend, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So as for some of the other winners, I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis winning for her role in Everything Ever All at Once was great. It's a little weird though that, like, I liked her in that film. I think she was very, very funny in that film. I can't believe that's the thing that she's gonna have her Oscar for. Like, it's just, again,
Uh-huh.
it's just like, I totally understand why Ke Huy Quan, who played the husband in that film, he won this Best Supporting Actor. I totally understand why he won, because that's a very emotional and hilarious performance that he gives there. I totally understand why um God, why am I blanking on her name? Michelle
Yeoh.
Yeoh, thank you. I totally understand why she won Best Actress, because again, that's a performance that requires you to give this broad range of emotions, and she does a very wonderful job at it. Totally get it. Jamie Lee Curtis playing the tax lady, it's just so weird to me, and it feels like she just kind of got swept up in the momentum of the movie and owes her Oscar to that. But I mean, I'm happy about it. It's just very strange.
Yeah. I mean, this is an exaggeration, but it's like if they gave the Oscar to Rekha Cooney. I mean,
Well, I mean,
she does have a dramatic role in the movie. It's just it's funny because it, like, the movie does this weird thing where it is funny and then it tricks you into suddenly being very sad.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I honestly think, like, part of the reason that works is, like, Jamie Lee Curtis, helping guide you into that unexpected emotional twist. So
yeah.
I don't think it's utterly ridiculous that she was recognized for it. And honestly, I don't know that I saw any of the other competitors. So
Yeah,
so
I mean, and they were all good. Like, I think Angela Bassett was kind of the favorite going into the weekend, who got nominated for her role in Black Panther. She did not win. It's really interesting because basically all four of the acting awards were were awarding good performances, but they were also, the thing about this award show is it's politics and it's storylines and it's comeback stories, right? Or honoring careers. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis has had a 50-year career almost. She's never been nominated for Academy Award. So this was a way of honoring her career. Again, Michelle Yeoh, who won, has had a long storied career, never been honored, and so we'll give her that award. By the way, only the second person of color to win the Best Actress award ever, and the
mhm.
first Asian woman to do it. So, eventful night for sure.
Yeah.
Again, Ke Huy Quan, the guy who played Short Round in the Indiana Jones films, like, had this huge career comeback where he did those films as a kid, disappeared after the 90s, no one saw him, and then now it's 38 years later and he's winning an Academy Award. That's just a wonderful, wonderful story.
Yeah.
And people fell in love with that story. And again, I don't want to take away from his performance, because he was very, very good in the movie, but it is part of that story as well. And then you have the Best Actor winner, Matt, who was Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser won an Academy Award for his role in The Whale, which is ironically a very traditional Oscar-winning performance. He's
Uh-huh.
playing a obese, a morbidly obese man, so he's caked in makeup and a fat suit to make him look fat, and it's a very dramatic, Oscar reel type performance role. It's very, very traditional. When you think about what an Academy Award winning performance is in the days of yesteryear, this is it. And so in this year where like things were changing, we also honored this guy who did a very Oscar centric type of performance.
Yeah, I mean,
but
what's
again,
funny,
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it reminds me of The Wrestler, which also won Best Actor, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, and of course, it's partially that, and it's also partially just honoring, Brendan Fraser, who has had a very long career and had a very difficult life. He was like the it guy in the 90s and early 2000s, and then, injured himself very seriously and kind of went through all that recovery. And now he's having a comeback as well. And we love to award comebacks. So.
Yeah. I thought it was more kind of complicated. I thought he was like blacklisted, actually.
Well, he did accuse someone at the Hollywood Foreign Press, who does the Golden Globes, of sexual assault, and that, I mean, didn't help. Like people are very powerful people and hurt. I mean, it was a combination of many things.
Yeah.
He basically was under like serious pain. Like
Okay.
he did a lot of his own stunts in the action films he was in, and like hurt himself very badly, and like had multiple surgeries just to get rid of the constant pain that he was in. So it was a combination of a lot of different things.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's more complex than I was aware. But
yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel the same as everybody who grew up in the 90s as we did, where I just love Brendan Fraser, and he's like a comfort human to me. So to see him sort of finally get, I don't know, some high level recognition for like he is talented. He has like just I don't know that there's like a more straightforwardly charismatic actor. Like he's great. I love him.
He's wonderful. I love him. I still haven't seen The Whale. I want to eventually see that movie, and I'm happy for him. He gave a great, very emotional speech. So did Ke Huy Quan. So did Michelle Yeoh. They just gave, just very emotional, wonderful speech, like everything you want to see from the Oscars. It was, and of course, Harrison Ford was the one that presented Best Picture. So Ke Huy Quan gets to jump up on stage and hug Indiana Jones, and it's this wonderful, picturesque moment that you wanted, which is like why they had Harrison Ford be the one to present the award to begin with. Of course, that doesn't always work, when they did the whole Chadwick Boseman thing a couple years ago that blew up in their faces. But in this moment, it worked because that movie won, and then they got to have that moment, and it was just wonderful.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I mean,
but Matt,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna say it seems like a lot of these awards are like in partial recognition of the amazing careers that these actors have had. Not to say that this specific movie is not deserving, but it's like, yeah, it's really about time that that Michelle Yeoh be recognized. Like she's just always been amazing. I was seeing some of these clips on YouTube or on Twitter or whatever of like these Hong Kong action movies that I've never even heard of, where it's just these amazing stunts, and she's clearly doing the stunts, and it's like Jackie Chan stuff where she's like, or it's like the bloopers of the stunts where she'll like fall off of a moving car or stuff, and you're like, oh my god. So she's a serious badass, actually.
She's awesome, man. I'm so happy for her. That one was a little bit of a toss-up. People didn't know exactly where that award was going. Unfortunately, our boy Colin Farrell totally shut out. That was his first nomination too. Actually, that's the interesting thing is, of the 20 people nominated in the actor categories, 14 of them were first-time nominees, which is a huge number. So which had an interesting effect actually at the Oscars, where there weren't a lot of stars there. And when I say stars, obviously there were a lot of very famous people there, but like, obviously no Will Smith, banned for 10 years, but like Tom Cruise wasn't there. Tom Cruise single-handedly saved the film industry is what everyone was saying, what Steven Spielberg was saying, and didn't bother showing up. Tom Hanks wasn't there. Brad Pitt wasn't there. Like the old guard of, Hollywood stars just wasn't there. Both because they weren't nominated, and also they did this thing in a lot of the categories where they doubled up the presenters, so they would have two presenters come out and do two awards. And I think part of this was because traditionally the actor winner from the previous year will come present the actress award and vice versa. Of course, they couldn't do that this year because the actor who won last year is banned from attending for 10 years, so they couldn't do that. So they doubled up those, and then did that for a lot of other categories. So it was an interesting thing where like there were definitely a lot of famous people there, but it just felt like there were less famous people there than you would think. Like they couldn't cut to super famous person in the audience as much.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why those actors chose not to come. I mean, do you think maybe because some of those names you just listed, it's like, I mean, yeah, they're movie stars, but they're 90s movie stars. Like, do you think maybe part of them is like, we need to bow out gracefully so we're not like shambling around being incredibly out of touch? I mean,
just don't think they want to get hit in the face.
Yeah, or
I do wonder if it's just like the press of it. Like it's just like a call is made that it's not worth the potential press if something happens.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, totally possible that they're just like distancing themselves for a while and they'll show up again in a year or two. It's interesting.
I don't know.
Though.
We'll see.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing though, Matt, the weirdest thing that happened in the entire Academy Awards was when Melissa McCarthy walked on stage and started reading an ad for Raid Shadow Legends.
Are you serious?
No, that didn't actually happen. But something similar to that happened, though, because she is starring in the new Little Mermaid movie that's coming out here. Her and another actress who I don't know, but she's a new actress that's playing Ariel. They walked on stage, and you're like, "Oh, who are these? What are they doing here?" And they start talking about the Little Mermaid, and you're like, "Okay, that's interesting." And it turns out this was ad space that was purchased by the Disney company. A little note here: the Academy Awards are presented on ABC, which is a Disney-owned network. So Disney bought $7 million worth of ad space from themselves to basically debut the trailer to the Little Mermaid movie. And actually, we talked about this last year, Matt. We talked about how I think the Academy Awards should do what the Game Awards do, which is, drum up interest of the lay people by premiering big trailers during it. And I said that they should do it. But the way they did it was the weirdest fucking thing in the world, because it felt like what I was thinking was actually just like during the commercials, they would like play a trailer like they do during the Super Bowl, like normal people. But they had this whole thing. They had the stars of the thing come out on stage and talk about their movie, which is a movie that's probably going to be up for consideration next year, which just makes it weird. It was just really, really weird and off-putting that this happened.
Yeah, I don't like it. I almost wish it had been Raid Shadow Legends, because then that would be funny.
But that's not actually, that's the icing, or that's the cake. Here's the icing on the cake. Later, Morgan Freeman and I can't remember who he went out there with. Someone that you're like, what do these two people have to do with anything? They're not in a movie together, and they were here to talk about Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers did the same thing. So basically, apparently what happened is the Academy or ABC, it's not clear which, like basically put feelers out to all the studios and said, it'll cost like $7-8 million and you can do something. And Disney said, yeah, we want to show Little Mermaid. Warner Brothers said, yeah, we're just going to talk about ourselves. And so they just played like a reel of the past 100 years of Warner Brothers. It's just... it's so confusing and weird. It's like again, I do think that they need to get into the ad game a little bit more to drum up interest. I do think what the Game Awards do, where they have world premiere of trailers and stuff at their award ceremony, is what people watch the Game Awards for. And if the Academy Awards want to stay relevant with a younger audience, they should get on that train. This was the weirdest fucking way to do it. It was so weird, and I don't think it worked at all. It
seems kind of like gone off half cocked, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny though. Like I agree with you. It's like an idea that has potential, but this is like their first shot, and they didn't know what they were doing.
Mhm.
But I was thinking maybe we've just been insufficiently cynical for years, because like the Academy Awards have always done these, creative and fun sort of like montage sequences and so forth, where it's like these callbacks to the history of film, or these callbacks to the films of the year, or these
Mhm.
tributes to whatever actor, or but like you have to ask, like, well, what studio is like standing behind the guy who's cutting those things together, or
Yeah.
making those organizational choices for those? Because you got to assume that there's an advantage if you're Warner Brothers to having everyone who watches the Academy Awards be reminded, oh yeah, Warner Brothers, so many great films. It works especially well if you don't know that you're being reminded of that on purpose. Um, that's just it's just I don't know. You've got me thinking about how cynical things might be without me realizing it.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just weird. It was the one moment of the show that left a bad taste in my mouth, where I was just like, this is strange. This is
Mhm.
Oh, also, by the way, the Little Mermaid movie looks like shit. It looks terrible. You can't release an underwater movie while Avatar 2 is still in theaters and have it
Oh,
look that bad. I mean, it is very possible. I'll say this. The CGI might not be done. This movie's got a
uh-huh.
few months left until it comes out. And, the CG stuff is the thing that they're always working up on until the very last possible minute. So maybe it just hasn't gone through its last rounds to really make it look good. But Matt, it looks terrible.
Uh-huh.
Go look at the trailer online. I think you'll agree with me. It does not look good.
I will. I will. It's been interesting. I think that I've seen most of the live action Disney movies with my kids, but they just don't have any sticking power. Even when they were littler and more in the
Yeah.
prime age group for Disney stuff, like the colorful, fun attractiveness of the cartoon films, the animated films, is always more appealing to children. And for some reason, yeah, this is what I expected to see. The color
Yeah.
palette they're using for The Little Mermaid, which is like the most colorful animated film ever, it's like gray.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It's disappointing. Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about the live action. I am more of a fan of them than most people. Like, I actually enjoyed the Aladdin one a lot.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree generally that like cartoons can capture color so much more vibrantly and not realistically, of course, but you know, designed for kids so much better. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it continues to be an interesting thing that they're fully committed to. So I hope it's good. Like, I hope this movie is actually good. But because I like The Little Mermaid as a story a whole lot. Um,
Me too.
but I don't know. We'll see. At least they're not going to make the mistake that Mulan made, where they decided not to make it a musical, which was still the thing that pissed me off the most about Mulan. Was like, you have so many great songs and you just carved them all out to make an action film.
Yeah,
Okay,
there were
whatever.
so many weird unforced errors with that movie. It was
Yeah,
just utterly baffling.
yeah. But that was the Oscars, Matt. Interesting. I still could not, in good conscience, like tell anyone to watch it. It's just like it's something that I will continue to do because I enjoy award ceremonies and I enjoy this whole process, even though it is silly and ridiculous. But don't watch it. Don't watch it.
Okay.
All right, that is all we have for you guys this week. If you have any opinions on M3GAN or on the Academy Awards, please feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter at doofmedia. Matt, we did get some feedback on our Mandalorian
Uh-huh.
opinions, and some people did not agree with us. They thought it was totally fine. I still vehemently disagree with them about that. But I thought one of the interesting things that someone said to us when they reached out to us via email or Twitter or Reddit was that like, well, the Spider-Man movies did the same thing, because in between the first Spider-Man movie and the second Spider-Man movie, Iron Man dies, and you don't get to see that if you just watched movies with Spider-Man in the name. And like, I still disagree that that is comparable to what happened with The Mandalorian, but that's a good point generally. And that like I was in the club in those movies, so I watched the thing where Iron Man died, and so I was aware of that going into the second Spider-Man movie. but I think it's bad generally to do that kind of, like, I'm not defending that either.
It's I mean, I like your phrase there, like either you're in the club or you're not in the club. Like we were kind of fumbling for analogies last time we talked, where it's like it would be like if you're reading a fantasy series and then you get the next book in the fantasy series and it's like, well, wait, what happened? I missed something. And it's like, oh, you had to get this thing over here. It's like there are conventions to how these things are done. The MCU is a sort of convention breaking thing, because it's basically saying, yeah, we're going to do an endless series of movies across many different characters, and sometimes plot events are going to happen in other movies, and that's already kind of straining, I think, your sense of what a narrative should be.
Yeah.
But if the policy now with the Disney TV shows is going to be, yeah, we're doing that with television too. You have to watch all of our TV shows, which are multi-hour commitments. If you want to feel like you're caught up, then I think I'm just out, because I can't care about that. I mean, I can barely care about the MCU, honestly, at this point. It's just it's just too much. And then you have too many characters that I don't care about, and I'm not really invested in their movies. Then it becomes a huge problem. Like, if Boba Fett were good, this conversation might have even been different, right? Like,
maybe
if Boba Fett were an awesome show, we'd watch Boba Fett, and then then maybe instead we'd be saying like, yeah, it's kind of a weird choice, but it's fine. Everybody watched Boba Fett anyway, right? It's like, no, they didn't, because it sucked. So
I think this is my main point, that like, it didn't bother me in the Spider-Man movies because I had watched those stuff and they were good and I enjoyed those things. But like, I shouldn't let that be okay. Like because I'm in the club, it shouldn't bother me. It's like, no, it actually should bother me as an appreciator of storytelling, that this is the way where everything is going. To where I will say, I still think like the Spider-Man movies generally, like the whole first act of the second Spider-Man film is him reeling with the death of Iron Man, and like that's an important part of the movie. That's like what the whole movie is kind of about, and so that is entirely different from the Mandalorian, in which Yoda is just back, and they haven't bothered to explain that at all, and still haven't. Episode 3, watched it this week, Matt. Still nothing. They're just moving right along. I think that's different, but it's still, I think it's bad. I don't think we should be telling stories in this manner. And I understand the love of connected stories, and it is so cool to see how the stories connect to each other, and that's one of the great appeals of the MCU as a thing. But I don't know, it's getting to a point where we're like, I don't think this is the best way to be telling stories, actually.
Yeah. I guess, just like I said a second ago, like if you're gonna mess up the convention or change the convention, then I might be out. Like, I can't sign up for that bargain.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will say though, episode 3 of The Mandalorian, best one of the season for sure.
Okay. Well,
and maybe a little bit Andor-y. There's a part, the bulk of the episode is about a scientist, a former Empire scientist who has been like re-allowed back in society by like the New Republic's like forgiveness program, and is just trying to make his way through life as a former Imperial scientist in the New Republic, not sure what he wants to do, and harboring guilt from the things he did, and kind of Andor-y a little bit.
Just when I'm out, you pull me back in by referencing Andor.
Yeah. Andor is still better. Don't get me wrong, but an interesting choice they made. And it's like one of those things where I'm seeing people say like, "Oh, is this a response to Andor, to the success of Andor?" It's like, no. The timeline for how long it takes these things to be created is way longer than, oh, we shifted production and rewrote a story because we saw how good Andor was doing. No, that story was written and probably filmed 6 months ago, like before Andor was even playing. So no, it is not that. But
and I'm also fine with Mandalorian being a Western and Andor being a spy thriller. Like that's okay. It doesn't need to be more like Andor. It's cool that they're doing that. But
I mean, like it is not like Andor in style, but just like the fact that one of the things that I thought Andor did very, very well was just tell stories about people just trying to live in this world that we've never kind of seen before in Star Wars, and that is what this episode is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I just said Andor is a spy thriller, but like all my favorite parts of it really have nothing to do with being a spy thriller.
Yeah. But
all right.
Overall, Mando season 3, approve.
Yeah. So yeah, you reach out to us via those channels that Scott just described, and you get us on a 15-minute tangent about Andor somehow.
Yeah, I said Mando season 3 approve. Let me retract that. Mando season 3 episode 3 approve. Mando season 3 not approve. But I'm still watching it, which is better than Boba Fett, I guess. So.
Still on the fence. Yeah. All right. Anyway, if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and anywhere else you can find podcasts.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head over to patreon.com/Doof Media and pledge at any of the available levels. You get a whole bunch of cool bonus stuff. I think there's going to be some new bonus stuff next week from our friends at the High Ground. I'm not sure what our schedule is. We did ours last week, right? So it'll either be this week or next week. One of those two. I think they're on the final Jurassic Park movie, which I can't wait, because did I tell you about Jurassic World Dominion, Matt, and how it's the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my entire life?
I think you did.
Okay. Well, I hope that they agree with me on that one.
I hope they enjoy it.
If you're curious at all what they have to say about Jurassic World Dominion and all of the Jurassic Park series and many, many more, patreon.com/Doof Media, donate at that Doof Troop level or higher, and you get access to all those episodes and many, many, many more.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Each review does help us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, that's it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be taking a look at the now Academy Award-winning film RRR. I think this is the Indian film that did not win for Best International Picture, but it won Best Song. So we're going to take a look at that. I've been meaning to watch this movie forever, and we're finally going to do it, Matt. So next week, RRR.
All right.
It's currently available on Netflix if you want to watch along with us, and then report back next week.
Perfect.
We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.